Welcome to Psalms Layer by Layer, a project of Cambridge Digital Bible Research. I'm Elizabeth. This video is our at-a-glance for Psalm 3. The purpose of this at-a-glance, or synthesis, is to capture the inner logic of the psalm, how this psalm works, and what makes it distinctive. It's our starting place for understanding a psalm. We've titled Psalm 3, A Shield Over Me. When David is attacked, he uses his shield to defend himself. The shield isn't what one might have anticipated, and that's where we find the poetry at work, as it gives its own picture of what David's shield is and how he uses it. The superscription for Psalm 3 introduces us to its tragic background situation. It's a psalm by David when he was on the run from his own son Absalom. Absalom was attempting to overthrow his father's rule and had gained a large following. The book of 2 Samuel, or 2 Samuel, describes Absalom's rebellion as God's discipline of David after his sin with Uriah and Bathsheba. David had sinned in sleeping with Bathsheba, the wife of one of his loyal men. He had gotten her pregnant and had Uriah the husband murdered in order to cover it up. A prophet of God spoke that there would be violence in David's own household because of this sin. And this psalm reflects, therefore, both the good and the bad side of God's covenant, consequences for sin, yet the Lord's unfailing loyalty to David. Therefore, also in the background ideas of Psalm 3 are those covenant promises that the Lord had already made to David. In this covenant, the Lord promised to be a father to him. This involved discipline when the king sinned, and that could mean enemies. But God also promised never to take away his chesed, his covenant loyalty, from David. That meant promised rescue from enemies. This gives us the two perspectives on enemies that are relevant to this psalm: a discipline sent from God, or a problem to be delivered from by God. Which will it be this time? The psalm begins with an attack. David's enemies are multiplying. He says it 3 times, as if they're multiplying on all sides. This attack is verbal. God won't save him. The attack is short, but it is powerful and, if true, deadly. David launches his defense. But you, Lord, are a shield over me. A verbal attack receives a verbal defense. But David does not defend himself. God is David's shield, his defense. This means that David is rejecting his enemy's storyline, the possibility that his enemies might become numerous, plot an attack, declare triumphantly that God won't save him, and then watch David suffer defeat. This is what likely would have happened if David were responsible for his own defense. But David is not defending himself here. Verse 5 gives the basis for David's confidence. Based on the covenant, whenever David calls upon the Lord answers. There is no argument based on David's innocence or guilt, only the relationship established with the Lord. When David calls, the Lord answers. Just how powerful is this defense? The results speak for themselves. David lay down, fell asleep, and nobody killed him during the night. He woke up, still safe. As before, David recognizes there was an alternative storyline that could have happened. It could have been that he fell asleep, his enemies attacked when he was unable to defend himself, and he would have fallen to his enemies. This is actually what we would have expected to happen if he were trusting in his own defense. The story about Absalom's rebellion makes it clear that David was in a weak position, and it was only God's doing that kept him safe. David's confidence would have been foolhardy if he were trusting in his own ability to defend himself. But he wasn't. It was trusting in God that he lay down and fell asleep. He was not in a strong military position with a heavy guard that could keep him safe during the night. But that wasn't the protection he needed. He woke up, still safe, because God protected him, even while he was sleeping. David takes this as precedent setting. If enemies were actively hunting him down, but God kept him safe while he was sleeping. It confirms that God continues in the same relationship with him. It leads to the expectation that whenever David lies down and falls asleep, he'll wake up still safe because God is the one protecting him. This is the connection between the defense, God watching out for him, and his confidence. This psalm moves quickly. We've now come to the victory section. Rise up and save me, my God. These are imperatives, pleas that direct God to rise up and save him now. But they're juxtaposed with the past. You've struck all my enemies on the jaw. You have broken the teeth of the wicked. The logical connection is what we've seen twice already in this psalm. In the past, enemies attacked. In all of those instances, whenever enemies attacked, then you, God, struck them on the jaw and broke their teeth. David can thus say, rise up and save me, because this is the established relationship, that when enemies attack, God defends David and delivers him. We see a clearly defined relationship in which David's role is to call out to God, and God's role is to save David. Once David has fulfilled his responsibility, God's part is guaranteed. That is why this section can be entitled Victory. It is now guaranteed. The question was Absalom's rebellion the result of David's original sin, such that God would abandon David and grant victory to the new king Absalom, shifting his covenant relationship to be with him, the son of David? Or was this one more enemy from whom God would deliver David, granting victory to him? The answer in the psalm is almost anticlimactic. God is still David's shield. God protected David in the past every time, and nothing has changed. David's sin was already accounted for in the covenant. The rebellion was a result of David's sin, but that does not break the covenant. The covenant still stands to deliver David from even these enemies. The covenant is neither broken nor changed. Returning to the big picture, we thus see that the middle section, defense, can be split based on who is doing something. It is the Lord's job to defend David. It is David's job to live in confidence, knowing that he has nothing further to do or fear. The first and last sections have interesting connections as well. The attack begins with enemies rising against David. Victory comes with the call to God to rise and save him. The Psalms nearly always have repeated root words, drawing attention to how God reverses expectations, righting wrongs and resolving problems. The enemies thought they could rise up and attack God's king. In response, God will rise up and attack them. The same dynamic occurs with the source of salvation. In the first section, the enemies taunt David, saying that there's no salvation for him. God won't save him. From the standpoint of victory, David corrects them, proclaiming that salvation does not belong to any person, but it is decided by God and God alone. The Lord is the one who saves. The implication is that for people, what matters is their relationship to God, since God is the one to decide whether or not to save them. This goes back to the original concerns over Absalom's rebellion and to whom God would grant victory. Here's the full at a glance. Those rising up at first are the enemies attacking, but he who rises last is God granting victory. The claim that God will not save David is completely undone because David knows God is loyal to his covenant. So even before the salvation is seen, David calls upon God, knowing that he's the one who saves, and that's enough. With David's call to God, his victory is guaranteed. With this full picture in mind, we'll now read the psalm in its entirety. I'm reading from our synthesis translation, which is our tool to make as accessible as possible the results of our analysis of Psalm 3. Lord, see how my enemies have multiplied. Those rising against me are too many to count. Many are saying about me, God won't rescue him. But you, Lord, are a shield over me, You restore my honor and lift up my head. Whenever I call out to the Lord, he answers me from his sacred mountain. I lay down and fell asleep. I woke up because the Lord is the one who sustains me. I will not be afraid of tens of thousands of people taking position against me on every side. Rise, Lord. Save me, my God. You've shamed all my past enemies with a blow to the jaw. You've rendered wicked people toothless. The Lord is the one who saves. Your people are the ones you bless. This completes the Psalm at a glance for Psalm 3. All our videos are provided free thanks to donations. Visit www.cdbr.org to learn more. Thanks for watching.